Malian transitional government has rejected a call by Ivorian officials for an ECOWAS-led talks over the detention of their soldiers and warned on instrumentalization of the regional body if in a bilateral and judicial matters. Plus, the International Monetary Fund has called on government in sub-Saharan Africa to be cautious about macroeconomic reforms as famine spreads in a region badly affected by the aftermath of COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. And those are my big stories of tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Hi there, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I am Teke Wana, welcoming you all on today's 6 p.m. Prime newscast on For You Television. We'll begin throwing our news tentacles from Angola, where Angolan President João Lorenzo has been officially inaugurated into office for the second time in Luanda during a heavily militarized ceremony whose elections results were disputed by the opposition. Njix Nabise tells us more.
Angolan's President João Lorenzo has promised to push ahead with economic reform and social welfare as he was sworn in for a second 5-year term after a disputed electoral win last month. Lorenzo pledged to be president for all Angolans at a colorful ceremony held at the historic Praça da República Square in the capital Luanda on Thursday amid tight security. Congratulations for the patriotism and high degree of tolerance and civility shown in what are already considered the most disputed general elections in the history of the young Angolan democracy, he said at his inauguration speech. Angolans have demonstrated to the world at a crucial moment that they know how to take the best choices and choose the future of their country with great responsibility, the president reiterated. He said that by re-electing him and his party, Angolans had chosen continuity and will be guaranteed stability as he pointed to future economic liberation in the country ruled since independence by historical socialist party. He promised to push ahead with reforms to encourage the private sector, expand the offer of goods and services and fight youth unemployment. Lorenzo equally promised to increase wages including for the armed forces, a pledge that received cheers from the population. His new deputy, Esperanza Maria da Costa 61, a college professor and biologist, was also sworn in, becoming Angola's first female vice president.
And over to one of our lead story, Malian transitional officials have rejected a call for ECOWAS-led talks over the detention of Ivorian soldiers in Bamako, warning about instrumentalization of the regional body in a bilateral and judicial matters. Foto has the rest of that story for us.
The sparring match between Ivory Coast and Mali on the detention of 46 soldiers continues. On Thursday, September 15, Bamako rejected Abidjan's call for a regional emergency crisis summit over the detention of its soldiers. The spokesperson for the government of the Sahelian nation, Colonel Abdoulaye Maïga.
À la décision du gouvernement ivoirien,
the decision by the Ivorian government to have transformed a judicial file into a diplomatic crisis and consequently to seize ECOWAS, the transitional government stresses that it is in no way consent by this procedure before the community body. Also, ECOWAS should note that the case of the 49 Ivorian mercenaries is purely judicial and bilateral. We equally warn against any instrumentalization of ECOWAS by the Ivorian authorities to avoid their responsibility vis-à-vis Mali, the government of the transitional government of Mali, while reiterating its attachment to peace, security and secular relations of good neighborness, specified that for the respect of its sovereignty, its national security and the vital interest of its people, it will not give into any blackmail or bullying. May God bless Mali and preserve Malians.
que Dieu bénisse le Mali et préserve les Maliens.
Since 49 Ivorian soldiers were arrested in Bamako in July, Abidjan has insisted the troops were on a routine rotation for personnel who provide backup services for the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali. However, the mandate of the troops remained obscure and they were charged with undermining state security. On Wednesday, following a meeting of Ivory Coast National Security Council chaired by President Alassane Ouattara, Abidjan accused Mali of blackmail. Mali's leader had suggested a prisoner swap to end the crisis. According to a source close to the Ivorian presidency, the matter should be discussed next week during an extraordinary ECOWAS summit held on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. However, it is unclear if Bamako will have representatives attend the meeting.
Tunisia's government and the country's main labor union have struck a pay deal aimed at increasing the wages of civil servants in the country as part of issues which have been causing public riots since the start of this year. The details in this report.
For several months now, there has been social tension in Tunisia marked by demonstrations because of a deep economic crisis as a result of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, so the officials say. But Tunisian pundits blamed the general riot to poor governance, which eroded since the beginning of 2022 amid rising prices of basic commodities, high unemployment rate, and a widespread of poverty. After all of this, the country's main labor union struck a pay deal on Thursday, September 15, with government officials, which includes a 5% annual hike to public sector wages until 2025.
Despite the delicate economic and financial situation, the government was keen to open negotiations on wage increases and to consolidate trust with the social partners in order to achieve the common objective of establishing social peace and supporting civil servants.
Nouradine Taboubi, leader of the trade union, stressed on the importance of peace.
Our objective through this agreement is to establish social peace and to ease the tense social climate in view of the very difficult social situation and the deterioration of purchasing power.
The Tunisian General Labour Union leader assured Tunisians that the first hike would take effect as from next month, with a rise in minimum wage as the government continues to negotiate with the International Monetary Fund over a $2 billion bailout in order to satisfy the need of all.
The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has called on governments in sub-Saharan Africa to be cautious about macroeconomic reforms as famine spreads in a region badly affected by the aftermath of COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. Ewane Epole tells us more.
The International Monetary Fund, in a report, said that addressing the lack of resilience to climate change and the resulting chronic food insecurity would require careful prioritization of policies, given the existing financial and capacity constraints in the country. According to its estimates, at least 123 million people, or about 12% of the population of sub-Saharan Africa, may be actually food insecure, severely malnourished, or unable to meet their basic food needs.
The policy response in many of the countries that are being mostly affected by these shocks has also been much delayed and unfortunately incomplete, raising uncertainty, deterring private investment, and stifling new sources of growth.
However, some trade regulatory and market liberalization reforms are feasible despite the numerous challenges, as said by the IMF.
I think we should guard against swinging from strong optimism of recent years about the region's economic prospects to the excess pessimism that seems to be seeping in. The full picture that we see is one of multi-speed growth, in which the regional aggregate number of 1.4% growth this year considerably masks the diversity that prevails across the region.
The letter continued by saying that the recalibrated monetary policies could mitigate the impact on domestically produced goods and anchor inflation. Trade liberalization and import diversification could help stabilize regional food supply and prices, the fund also suggested. As a reminder, the International Monetary Fund has renewed its commitment to support African countries in need of technical assistance
and financial support.
A memorandum of understanding on a gas pipeline project linking Nigeria to Morocco, which will supply West Africa and Europe, was signed on Thursday, September 15 in Rabat. Of what importance is this project? Get the details in this report.
The memorandum on the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline project, initiated by the leaders of the National Nigerian Petroleum Company Limited, the Moroccan Office of Hydrocarbons, and the mines, and a senior official of the Economic Community of West African States ECOWAS in charge of energy, speaks volume of the commitment of ECOWAS and all the countries involved in the contribution to the feasibility of this important project to the sub-region. The project, for which no timetable has been set, is being carried out in a geopolitical context marked by strong international demand for gas and oil, as well as a surge in prices following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. However, several countries are battling for gas survival, especially in Europe, to reduce their dependence on Russia's supplies. Thus, the 6,000-kilometer Nigeria-Morocco project, which will cross 13 countries along the Atlantic coast and supply the landlocked states of Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali, is expected to bring more than 5,000 billion cubic meters of natural gas to Morocco. From them, it will be connected to the Maghreb-Europe gas pipeline and the European gas network. Nevertheless, the signing of the memorandum announced at the end of 2016 comes against the backdrop of heightened regional rivalry between Morocco and Algeria, Africa's largest exporter of natural gas and the world's 7th largest. The crisis between the two Maghreb heavyweights culminated the rupture of their diplomatic relations in August 2021 at the initiative in Algiers to materialize a competing mega project for a trans-Saharan gas pipeline whose completion is still pending. This new collaboration between Nigeria and Morocco on gas transportation is destined to beef up the economy of both nations and, above all, cement their diplomatic ties.
Flooding across Sudan has killed at least 20 people over the past week, raising the official death toll from floods since the start of this year to 134. We are told that Sudan is witnessing one of its drastic rainy season this 2022. Ewane Epole has the rest of that story for us.
Torrential downpours throughout August and early September have washed away roads, houses and vital infrastructure across the country of Sudan, cutting off supply lines to rural areas in need of humanitarian aid. The Office of Brigadier General Abdul Jail, leader of Sudan's National Council for Civil Defense, said an additional 120 people were injured from the past weeks of flooding. According to the United Nations' latest flooding report, nearly 300,000 people have been affected by the floods and 16,900 homes have been destroyed. The Civil Defense Council said this year's deaths included 74 who died when their homes collapsed and 6 who were killed in the water-related electrocutions. Equally, Sudan state media announced on Wednesday that a newly built sugar factory near the eastern city of Kassala collapsed under heavy rains. It should be noted that the rural east and west of the country have been the most affected by this year's downpours. In 2020, flooding and heavy rains killed around 100 people and damaged more than 100,000 houses.
Ewane Epole puts a wrap to today's English primetime newscast on For You Television. I want to thank you all immensely for your kind attention. Until we meet again, as from Monday, God willing. We wish you all a splendid weekend in the company of our programs. Until then, God bless Motherland Africa. Bye-bye.